This conference will now be recorded.
I will use the notes today if there is anything to type it, because of course there is no presentation as such for that.
Okay.
Whatever are we going to discuss today, because ours is let me open the old one, it's better, huh? Then we will continue. Just a minute. Give me a second. Yeah, so this is what generally that's like pre-sales consultants do, and this is not needed. All these were normal things, right? So activities of the pre-sales team.
Are you
So this is,
presenting anything, Raj?
yeah, I'm doing it. Just a minute.
Okay. You don't say anything. That's the reason.
Yeah. So right. So is it visible now to you? Visible, right? Screen is visible, right?
Yeah. Now it is.
Okay. Right. So right, who will be involved in this process and all, everything we have discussed. So whatever we have discussed so far about the pre-sales part, right? So all these things we have discussed so far. Now today's session we are focusing majorly on three different aspects, because being we are into pre-sales, because pre-sales teams are the one who usually interact with the clients and they get required information and all from them. In this context, being a pre-sales team, at the same time, if we are working with clients and customers and all that, there are three standard procedures which normally any organizations has to be followed. Because for example, if you are the customer or if you we are the customers, wherein we were expecting someone to develop an application for our requirements, let us understand from that context. Okay, I'm explaining from that side. For example, a customer is expecting, like for example, we are the clients and we were expecting someone to develop a project and all. Normally, this process will be categorized into three different parts. I'm texting on the notes. Please let me know whether are you able to see this or not. Notes, right? So I'm texting on the notes. Okay.
Available to see
So
you.
this is it. Can you see the text? Can you see the notes page, which was? Can you see the notes
Yes.
page here?
Yes, Raj. We are able to see the notes.
Okay, great. Right. So normally there will be three things. So one is we talk about RFI, which stands for request for information. Okay, this is the first point. And second, we talk which talks about request for quotation. And the third one, which is like whenever we are working on the project, which is the major one, and what is that usually people prepare against to that, whatever the project management planning relating to the technicalities or high level based on the high level requirements, what a pre-sales team all these things will be doing and all based on RFP. This is what generally we call it as request for proposal. Request for proposal, right? So these are the three basic steps which being a uh, online IT sales team, all that stuff, pre-sales teams and all, one should understand. Because if you this is an interaction usually happen between two different parties. One is client, second is the vendor team, whoever they are, right? So if you understand from the client perspective, because whatever the understanding you need to do in the beginning, being a pre-sales team and all, you have to understand what procedure and what process usually they follow first. So after that, what is that against to that? What is that you need to prepare and all everything that comes under all these project management plans. All these things comes under that. Now here the first thing, when if there is any requirement for any of the customer, let's say for example customer wants some application to be developed for whatsoever reason. So the first thing what is that they do is that they identify RFI. This is the first step which normally they follow. RFI stands for request for information. Request for information means customer try to gather the information of the vendors, like whoever the vendors let's say for example point of sale system, right? So what point of sale system is? Point of sale system is an application used in the organizations, especially retail outlets and all, for billing purpose. That's what generally POS stands for. Now customer is expecting some to develop some point of sale system for their requirements. Assume that they had an existing application, they want it to develop for the next level, or they may require a new application as separate, whatever it was. Now, if you are the customer, understand, you both of you from your context. Okay, assume that you are all the customer, you're the client people, you are the people who are expecting solution from vendor. What is that the first thing you do? First thing you see whether who are the vendors available to develop this POS system. Point number one. What experience these people has. Normally here there are two things. Either you can expect someone to develop the application as per your need. This is one category. Second category, you can buy an POS system product from any of the vendor, right? So it is basic, very simple to understand. When I have given an example about shopping in the beginning days, if you remember, of course, that is not relating to IT. We can go for shopping. We can do two things. One, you can get a cloth and we can stitch based on the measurements of an individual. That is one thing can be done. That's what we call it as project based. Means giving the basic requirements and high level requirements and making people to develop it right from the beginning, scratch. This is one way of doing it. Second way is that ready-made product you are buying, ready-made dress you are buying. That's what generally we call it as a product. So either you can buy a product or you can ask some vendor to develop the project right from the beginning. Of course, both has a different these things, because even though if you want to develop someone to develop a project right from the scratch, or if you want to see the product and all, but make sure your organization has some customization which is required. Even though just because of that product you are buying doesn't mean you are buying the whole product, right? So there may be some customization which might be required according to the requirement of yours, which you need to also say, which you need to understand. That's the reason why here, if you are a customer, if you want someone to develop a solution for the business problem, what is that you are facing? The initial requirement, what is that you collect, is to that you need to identify the vendor, who are the vendors available, what will be the size of the organization, how big it was, right? So what their past experiences was. All these things you have to collect first. This is where generally we call it as request for information, right? So initial information, whoever is capable and whoever are required to develop the project is what you have to see. This is what we call it as requested information, so that you will get an assessment that what kind of people are we having, right? What kind of vendors are available in the markets, depends on the project development or a product development. Either way it is, right? This is first point. Second, based on that, generally this request for quotation is the second stage, where we will be expecting people to develop a quotation, right? So quotation means in terms of the financials and all that stuff. Normally, this quotation has a differences, because normally here is a question. For example, if some customer expecting us to develop a solution, unless until there is no proper request for proposals, like unless until if you don't know the technicalities and all, how come a customer will provide us the quotation, right? So this is a thing. So this request for quotation is a process which is a floating process, which usually we follow over a period of time. This is not the quotation we were finalizing in the beginning itself, because there are two criteria we have to follow. Please do remember. First criteria is technical criteria, second is financial criteria. Technical criteria means how technically these people are qualified and how functionally these people were qualified to develop the project. So if they are qualified, then only they are eligible for the bidding process. Otherwise, there will be of no value for that. Second is financial criteria. Financial criteria means how big the organization must be, what must be their turnover, because whether this organization in the live state or in inactive state, that should be known to us. Then only we will be allowing people to work for our services, all that. So that is the second thing which normally we see. But when we talk about request for proposals, before you are going to request for proposals, usually any customer will expect some what kind of quotation based upon the basic outfit what usually they give. Because for example, you are developing a you are getting a product from the customer. For example, it's not a project. Please do remember. For example, you are expecting a product. You want to develop. You want to purchase a point of sale system product from the customer. Now, do remember that POS system was already developed. The product was readily available. Now, you may require a quotation from the customer on this context. If it is a product based, I'm talking about. Of course, even though when customer is giving you the quotation, there are negotiations functionally, technically, and as well as financially happens. Like quotation, once you have received the quotations and all, like technical, financial negotiations will be taken place. Apart from that, normally, if there is any customization, is again subject to terms and conditions. Because, for example, if I am the vendor, if I am giving a product to you, so if you are taking a product as is, then the cost is different. At the same time, if you are expecting me to make some additions or changes and all everything to the existing thing, and then cost will vary to me, right? So because I will be charging something extra. So whatever the quotation related stuff, what is that customer is expecting from the vendors and all everything comes under RFQ part. Request for quotation is what about. The third point is called as RFP, which normally we call it as request for proposals. In this request for proposals, usually based upon the high level requirements, because in this stage, what usually happens, I'll tell you. In this request for proposals and all that, customer will identify, because in the request for information they have identified few vendors, right? Qualified vendors were identified. What normally those people do is that those people will explain, because they'll conduct a meeting where they will be inviting all the vendors, whoever is qualified, basically on a high level note, whoever is qualified, to discuss about the high level requirements, what they are expecting these people to develop. They will explain each and everything. At the same time, even in the client side, there will be a project management team or some this procurement teams, all these people. So these people will prepare an RFP. This is where we call it as request for proposal. Means meeting will be conducted. Once the meeting is done, so there is an RFP document which will be given, especially RFP document will be prepared by the customer side, where they will be providing to the vendor people and all. So based on that, whatever the relevant information they have seen under RFP, so what is that they have to prepare? Like what is the project management plan, right? What technicalities, functional, non-functional technicalities, all these things in a format of project management planning or project management document. So it has to be provided after that. So against to the RFPs, what is that we need to provide? So this information has to be taken care of. So this is what generally the process which normally we follow when we are following about the bidding process. So when there is a bidding process is going on in reference to the pre-sales activities and all. So there are three activities you need to understand. One is requested information will be taken by the client, where they see who are the qualified vendors, what their expertise, all that stuff. Request for quotations, if any, that is the continuous process, like where is see, because financially financially that quote has to be qualified, right? So at the same time, technically both has to be qualified. Technically qualification qualified means they have to say they have to prepare RFPs and all that. So normally this request for proposals usually they will be doing in two cases. Request for proposal will be prepared so based on one or two people. Normally in this quotation itself or in the basic information, we will come to know what exactly the requirements we want, all that. So this stage usually this RFPs will be given to the people, whoever the vendors we have initially to understood it, understood initially to whom we have identified and all that. These RFPs will be prepared. Right. So whenever they are preparing an RFP, for example, because you are in the sales team, right? So you are in the pre-sales team where you need to give relevant information to them against to the RFPs, what is that they prepare. So being a sales team, you should understand as a combination of technical, functional, and all these people, one should understand about what exactly the information will be available under the RFPs, right? So what are the informations which are available under RFPs and all everything should be known to us well in advance. Okay. So normally RFPs are the one, in short, I can say whatever the client requirements and all everything. So those client requirements require client related requirements and all everything comes under RFPs part. So when you see RFPs and all, RFP contains whatever I'm explaining you and whatever I was mentioning here are the high level ones. Of course, there is an RFP document which was as separate, so that I'll be showing it as separate, right? There is an request for proposal documentation. Of course, detail part and all everything will be there because this whatever I'm explaining you, the highlighted bullet points, all that stuff, right? So initially to understand it. So when you see request for proposal and all, usually this is where generally they will be looking, they will be mentioning the first point. The first point what they see is that eligibility criteria of vendors. Because normally if you see, we have already done it, right? So we if you see that we have already done that, because in the request for information and all, who are the capable vendors are available in the market and all everything, anyway they have got an idea. So based on that, they have to reconfirm it, right? They reconfirm it. In this reconfirmation, what is that they have to do is that first of all, they have to see the eligible criteria of the vendors. This eligibility criteria, as already mentioned, you two criteria are there. One is financial criteria, second is technical criteria. Financial criteria means what is their turnover, right? So how big the organization is, all that. Second is technical criteria. Technical criteria means how qualified they are, how many projects are, how many, how much, for example, if it's a retailing domain and all. So what experience these people have in the retail domain for how long, and to whom they have provided services, and they need the information of the project services to whom they have given, right, for the references, all these, right? So this is based on that eligibility criteria and all everything against to the vendors selection and all everything will be taken place. This is point number one, right? So eligibility criteria will be mentioned. So based on the eligibility criteria, whoever is eligible will be moved further, whoever is not eligible will be kept aside, right? So that is the first point. Second point, they have to mention the dates of submission, whatever the relevant information to be submitted. So that information has to be mentioned here. This is what we call it as dates of submission is. Means what is the submission dates? So when do we require to submit this information and all, and how do we submit this information? So dates of submission and all everything comes under the second thing. So the first one is eligibility criteria of vendors will be taken into an account. Second, dates of submission will be taken into account. The third point, what is that we must be knowing about? The selection procedure will be mentioned. The third point is selection procedure. On what basis selection is being taken place and how the selection is being taken place. That is comes under the selection procedure here. So the first is eligibility criteria of vendors will be identified first. Dates of submission, when this to be submitted, all that. Yeah, Pawan, go ahead. Go ahead, Pawan.
Yeah. So basically, you are telling all these request for quotation and proposal.
Request
Will
for
these,
proposal.
yeah, request for
Go ahead.
proposal and quotation, can this be
Hmm.
modified or can be uh, uh, re renegotiated once a project is initiated based on the dynamics of the project?
No. Because unless until there, see, one point is there. I think I'm nearer to you. I'll give you. I think what is that you're asking me in reference to the requirement changes? Are you talking about
Yeah, when
requirement changes? Are you
that is
talking
based on
about?
the dynamics of the project and the changes of the
That's fine.
client need.
Requirements of the project. Are you talking about? Is that you're asking me?
Yes, yes, yes.
About so requirements document, as I mentioned earlier, there is a facility. Yes, this can be done. So that is where generally this change management practices comes into picture. There is a change management document will be as separate. So for that there is a document called change order request. Let me show you. Of course, this is not our part of it, but still anyway, I'll explain that to you. There will be a document called change order request. Okay, let me show you. Uh, change, yeah, change order request. So this is a document will be there initially. This is how usually. For example, let us forget about RFP process, all that. Let's say, for example, we have got a project, right? So we are working on it. There are some changes happens. So this change request form is what initially to start with. In this change request form, so based on the change request form, here whatever the required and desired changes to be made, all the information will be updated here. So based on that, whatever the relevant technical and budget impact evaluations will be made, and finally whatever are accepted will be mentioned here. These are the actual ones. Actual ones must be established. So here is a possibility. Normally these are the things which can be done, but subject to terms and conditions. That it doesn't mean that, for example, customer is expecting you to make some 10 changes, doesn't mean that we are accepting all. Depends on the two criteria. One is technical evaluation is the first criteria. Second is project or budget impact evaluation. These are the two evaluations will be taken into consideration. So if these two evaluations were done, obviously this changes and all everything will be taken place subject to terms and conditions. Again, financials applies, because that's the reason why we take, because yesterday session, if you remember, I have explained one point called FTE, full-time employment. Means fixed amount of money is one thing. FT means full-time employment. Full-time employment means how many people are we deploying for the project to complete, how many members required. So how many hours they are working extra, that much of billing will be generated automatically, right? So this is how it happens. So in reference to the changes that you're talking about, if this is your question, yes, these changes can be made subject to terms and conditions between both the parties. But when you talk about RFPs, request for proposal standards and all everything, those standards will not change anytime. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not highlighting the standards because those are basically a kind of um, the compliances which are all comes into. But my limitation of doubt is restricted to the quotation and the proposal.
Quotation, see, that's what, see, that's what the proposal documents were same. Proposals never changes. See, can you give me an example? What is that you are expecting, that you want this to be changed? What is your
Okay.
understanding? Because, for example,
So,
let me put you this way.
all,
I am
okay.
expecting an application to develop by you. Okay, for
Hmm.
example, please allow me for 2 minutes. I am the customer. I am expecting a point of sale system to be developed for my organization. Now I am giving an RFP, request for proposal will be prepared by me. There are some standard information which I am mentioning here. Okay, these are my informations. Against to the information, what is that I was mentioned? You need to give a statement. Means you need to give the detailed information about the information. What is that I have asked me. Now, in this context, you tell me what is that you are expecting changes to be made on what context?
Okay. See, the customer may be at one point during the beginning of the stage, he might be at one level of understanding about his own application. But based on the dynamics of the current trending aspects, he might
Hmm.
again think to or upgrade the existing one to a different level, maybe in
Hmm.
terms of the application side or in terms of his infrastructure side or whatnot. I'm not
Hmm.
limiting to anything. Anything that he wants a change of it. So if that is the
Hmm.
case, then the proposal might a bit change, right? That can be
No, no
a
need,
little
no need,
deviate.
no need, no need, no need. Because I'll tell you, a request for proposal is an initial information which customer has given. For example, I'll put you this way. Allow me for 2 minutes. Then you can ask me. I'll tell you. See, proposal is a standard document which will be given by the customer that we are expecting so and so, so and so, so and so. This is what our eligible criteria were. These are the selection procedures to identify the vendor selection and all that. This is what generally we are doing. So that highlighted informations will be given under the request for proposal. Now, when you're talking about the technicalities of the project, means changing the dynamics of the projects and all everything, usually what will change you, man-hours will increase, right? So when there is a technical complexity increase for a project in future, automatically what will happen? Man-hours will be increased. So where the problem comes, if you have not discussed this prior, then problem comes to you, right? If you have not discussed with me. But normally, what is that we do now? Usually, we go for FTE only. Means how many number of people are working for how many hours and days they are working. So bill will be generated automatically based on that, right? So it is nothing to do with man hours. So for example, say 500 man hours initially we have planned. After that, I have asked you to make some changes out of it, wherein 100 man hours were increased. This is because of my changes which was made by me. So obviously, thus for 100 hours of time, whatever because of my changes happens and all, that will be added in the billing itself. So for that, you don't require to make any changes on the RFPs and all. You don't need to do that. You understood? Pawan? Clear?
Yeah, I got a bit of your point, but there are two things here which I might be confused or maybe a little advanced before you
Yeah.
come
Mm,
on to the
mm,
onto the
mm,
topic. But
mm.
the proposal is one which I understand what you are
Customer
telling
gives,
now is
client gives,
before the
client gives.
bidding point, before the bidding
Yes,
selection point. But
yes, 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 yes.
um, it's not post bidding selection.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes,
Even in
yes,
the
yes.
post bidding
You
selection
continue.
also the same proposal comes into the picture, right? And the same proposals will be applicable for sure.
No, see, first of all, proposal will be given. Okay, proposal will be given. So, based upon the proposal, what is the plan of action? Are you going to execute for this application? That information has to be again given back to the customer. Along with what? Along with the financial quotation they have to come. Do you understand? Right? For example, I am the customer, right? Let me put you this way. I am the customer. I am expecting you to develop a point of sale system. For that, I have selected two parties. One is you and second is Vinay. For example, I have identified two vendors and I have prepared an RFP, right? So criteria, all that was mentioned. So of course, say fortunate enough that both of you were qualified in eligibility criteria, all that stuff. Wherein based on the RFP, whatever the information I have given, you have submitted your process, like project planning process, how you are going to develop the project, right? So what are the functionalities and non-functionalities on a high level note, technicalities, right? So all these things in a project management plan, being a vendor, you guys were submitting me along with the financial quotation. Right. So in this financial quotation, what is that you mention? Financial quotation you are mentioning based on the consultant wise. Cost will be based on the consultant. Whenever you give a quotation to me, what is that you say? For example, project manager per hour $200 you are quoting, whereas Vinay is quoting $210. Right. Maybe for a business analyst you are quoting $150 per hour. Maybe Vinay is quoting $100. They understood. Pawan. We are clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So negotiations, where negotiations taken place, financial negotiations. I'll be fine. For example, I have selected only one person with so and so. In reference to the changes, where the changes happens after that, post. I'm talking about post bidding process. I'm talking
Selection,
about not
post
pre, the
selection of
post one, post selection of that. Whenever the project was kicked off, whenever the project has initiated, what kind of difficulties being a vendor you will be facing, if there is any deviation in requirements taken place, then there is a problem here, right or not? So
right.
that is based upon the mutual consent of the both the parties. That is where generally this change request form come into existence. In this change request form, what is that you are doing? For example, if I'm the customer, what is that I'm doing? I'm giving here, I'm writing the information. For example, these are the requirements I want. For example, 1 2 3 4 5 6 and all, these are the projected change I'm expecting. This is what the information I'll be giving you here, right? I'm giving you. What is that you guys were doing now? So you do the risk evaluation. Your project management team will do the risk evaluation. At the same time, your project management team will see the project impact evaluations, all that stuff, budget impact evaluation, technical evaluation. Everything will be made. So, for example, I have given six, for example, six projections, six requirements. I'm expecting you to make some changes. You don't accept all these six. You may be accepting how many? Yeah, I think you may be accepting only three out of it. Understood? So
Mm-hmm.
this in reference to the changes of the application once the project is started. So for example, man hours is increased, automatically budget will also get increased because end of the day that I know that, right? I know that well. because in the beginning itself we came to know that these many hours it will be taken for these requirements, which was finalized. For example, 500 man hours is required to complete this. This is what we have finalized as of now. After that, because of the changes I'm expecting you to make out of it, assume that for example there are 100 more hours were increased. What will happen now? 100 more hours were
Obviously, the
increased. What will
cost will definitely be increased.
simple. There is no interaction. There is no need of discussion here, right? So because anyway the cost was finalized already. How many people were working? Billing will be generated based on that. So client will pay accordingly.
Okay, this
You
change
understand?
request form will be given from the client side, or
No,
the service based
you do
companies
that.
were.
For example, you are the vendor, right? So for example, any one of you are vendors, like who is going to develop solution for us. You prepare this change request form based on the information what I give, because this
Okay.
is where generally this change business analyst team will work here. Normally, business analyst team responsibility is this. Business analyst teams because this is where generally BA plays a vital role. So what BS do? For example, the project was started. Forget about RFPs, all that, right? So project was given to you. Project was finalized. You have started working on the project. Now, for example, if there are any changes in the application was done. So a business analyst is the person who will be the frontline warrior, right? So he'll be the front face of the project. So he's the one who is going to take up all the information. So whenever they are taking the information, this change request form will be prepared by the BA, right? So what was the change title, when they have submitted, what are the related requirements based on the interaction they had with the customer. For example, they have interacted with me, right? So business analyst was interacted with me and they have taken all the information, and that information will be updated here in this document. Based on this, your team means client side, vendor side, whoever the project management team and technical team, they will evaluate this technical evaluation and impact evaluation. For example, due to the changes happens and all, how it is impacting on the technology, how it is impacting on the project, how it is impacting on the budget. For example, if I'm expecting you to make some 6 changes. Technically speaking, 3 are not possible. Take out, right? Remaining 3 are possible. For those 3, how many hours will it? For this, how many hours it will be taken? You will be mentioning here. This is where generally this change order request. So of course, this is an advanced question. Of course, let me. That's the reason anyway. So here the budgeted hours and all everything will be mentioned by you guys. And these budgeted hours, you are preparing this, and again you will be submitting to me. If there is any negotiation taken place, if there is any allowance, we'll do that. Otherwise, based on my agreed, because customer authorized representative has to sign this document. Yes, these changes we are accepting, and these are the budgeted hours which we are accepting finally. So, and whatever they have accepted, based on that, you are developing, you are making changes, and again you are resubmitting the work accordingly. So this is all happens once the project is started. Whatever the change order request form, whatever I am showing you, this comes into picture when there are any changes happens in the project once it was started. So before that, there is nothing to do with this change request all that, because we haven't even got the project yet. We are still in the stage of eligibility criteria. We are in the stage of still we are in the stage of what we called we are in the stage of a selection process, right? We are in the
Yeah,
stage of
just giving the submitting the proposals and all.
that's it. We are still in the stage. Once we have got the project, then if there is any changes, there is a change management procedure will be followed. Change order request form, change management plan will be there. So that plans will be taken care of by the business analyst as well as the project management team. Both they will identify at the same time cost, even number of hours, cost, everything will be presented based on the interaction they had with technical team, all that. And finally that will be submitted, that information will be submitted to the customer. If client is accepted, and if there is any negotiation, okay, fine, that happens. And finally the next level process will continue. You got my point clear, Pawan? Vinay?
Yes, Raj. Yeah, thanks.
Right, so this is how usually it happens. Okay, so there is no change, so it's subject to understanding first of all. there won't be any changes in request for proposal, because request for proposal is an information customer is giving. This is how I am selecting, right? This is my eligibility criteria. These are the dates of submissions, right? At the same time, these are my documents which I am expecting you to provide. These are my legal terms and conditions. For example, some legal terms and conditions. One more point I've forgotten, right? So for example, legal terms and conditions. Right. What are legal terms and conditions? Legal terms and conditions means whatever the software are we using must be, example, I am giving you an example, that must be a licensed one, right? No open source tools are allowed. No trial versions are being used. Even for UML diagrams preparation also, no, right? No open source tools. Only licensed versions has to be used. Now again comes into picture, if it is licensed versions and all, who has to borne the cost? Right, so bond, the cost will be borne by the customer itself. Customer has to buy the licenses, because I have to buy licenses and I need to give it to you. Then you will be developing the project, because you are not the one who requires the solution. Now who requires the solution, right? I am the one requires it. So I have to buy the licenses and all, I need to provide you. Based on the licenses what I have given you, you guys can move further. Understood? Clear? Vinay, Pavan.
Yes, Raj. Yes.
Right, so request for proposal, again I'm repeating, request for proposal is being submitted by the client first. In this request for proposal, whatever the informations are available is what I'm explaining now to you. Eligibility criteria of vendors, they'll mention. Dates of submissions will be mentioned by them. Selection procedures will be mentioned by them. Legal terms and conditions and all, everything will be mentioned by them. At the same time, if there is any constraints, right? For example, any constraints, if they feel, if they have any constraints, all that stuff. Because in this constraints, if you remember yesterday, I have given an example for healthcare, right? Healthcare is accessing applications and all. They say that, for example, ours is a healthcare application. We have these constraints. They will mention that. Customer will mention you, right? So for that, again on that, you will be asking. Then, if it is required, so what is the next way? What is another way to follow for that? Right? So do we have any alternate for that? So there will be an interaction, because it won't be done in 2 days or 10 days or 15 days. Usually this is the procedure. All this procedure will be taken not less than 2 months. Minimum time. I'm talking about minimum 60 days of time will be taken for the whole thing. It won't be done in a month or so usually, because availability of the, practically speaking, what happens usually for us is availability of the people must be there. Because for example, there were no people available who are responsible for that at that point in time. Usually this things will get delayed, right? Sometimes. So there are a couple of reasons behind that. So this request for proposal will be given by the client first initially. Based on that, whatever the relevant information customer has given. So against to that, this pre-sales team followed by the project management team and all. So they have to prepare a project management plan and they need to submit that. So once the final closure was done, then officially project will start working. From there onwards, these BA teams, all these things will actively participate. From there onwards, detailed active participation by the BA teams and all, everything. From there, it will be taken into an account. Clear? Understood?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Right?
Raj. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So legal terms and conditions they will mention there. They will mention even about the constraints also, and how they are presenting the information. That also they mention, right? So how they are presenting the information. Are they presenting information? For example, if there is information and all, how they are presenting? Are they giving in a document format? Are do they come up with some presentations, all that stuff? All this information will be given under the request for proposal from the customer end. Client has to provide this information first. Understood? Clear?
Yes. Hello,
Right?
Raj. Am
Yeah,
I
yeah,
audible?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right or not? Clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what generally the request for proposal, high level. Do remember, it's because they see there is a lot of information to be explained. Because I don't think I'll be doing in this week. It may get extended for next week also. I'm very sure. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Mhm.
so this is the high level understanding, right? This is what generally on a high level note customer will expect you to do. Now, here being a new entrant who are working on her, whoever is knowing about sales and bidding process and all, first of all, one must be knowing about the roles and responsibilities of two parties. Because if you are learning this initially now, being an entrance who are learning this, first of all, you should know about the roles and responsibilities between the client and vendor. For example, you are the solution provider and the client. What are the roles and responsibilities between you and you yourself and as mine? You should know that first. So that I'm explaining now to you. Okay. So what roles and responsibilities we have to follow? Roles and responsibilities between the client and vendor are as follows. Right. So what are the roles and responsibilities that has to be mentioned here, right? So when you talk about roles and responsibilities, the first thing is that you need to have a details of the first point. You need to have the details of the project planning. Right? So this is where generally project management planning document will be there. So this is what the document was. I'll explain these later, okay? Because as I told you, there will be time it will be taken. For example, this is what generally project management plan. Against to the RFP, please do remember this document has to be prepared by the project management team and XYZ, right? So all these people has to prepare this first, right? So project management planning and all against to the RFP which was given by the customer once it was selected. And also this project management plan, how they are going to do the project, right from the technicalities of the project, right from the functionalities, all these they have to prepare, right? So finding resources, constraints, dependencies, so they have to mention each and everything, assumptions, all these things has to be mentioned by a customer, because vendor, sorry, vendor has to submit this project management plan against to the RFP whatever is being given by the customer. So a detailed project planning is what generally one responsibility being a vendor, one has to be taken care of. This is one thing. Second point, understanding and as well as finalization of the project timelines. Because how much time will it be taken me to complete? That you will submit me, and how much time will it be required for me to develop the project? I will explain from my side because I have my own constraints and you have your own constraints even. So project timelines will also be considered into account here. So first is the details of the project planning is required. Second, project timelines are also required. Next, again, the third point, the same thing, whatever I was mentioned in the RFP and all, that same thing I am writing, right? So terms and conditions means legal terms and conditions. What are the legal terms and conditions will also be discussed. Fourth point, this is where generally we call it as knowledge transfer plan. Knowledge transfer plan. Now here is a question. Raj, what is meant by knowledge transfer plan? Can anyone say what is meant by this? What is meant by knowledge transfer plan?
The
Why
client
knowledge transfer?
needs, the
Hmm.
client needs, and what is their requirement and all. Until and unless they let the vendor know, it is not that easy for the vendor to develop their application or whatever
Hmm.
that they wanted to deliver.
Hmm. Hmm. So knowledge transfer plan means how the knowledge will be transferred from client to the vendor, right? How the knowledge will be transferred. For example, I am the customer. I am expecting you to develop an application called XYZ. How am I transferring knowledge? What is the way of transfer? Is that I am transferring knowledge through documentation, or is that's where generally we will be recruited a person called POC or an SME? Sometimes some people say SME, subject matter expert. Somewhere it is called POC. POC means point of contact. There will be SPOC. Normally in IT terminologies, we call it as SPOC, SPOC. We call it as SPOC means single point of contact. There will be some single point of contact person will be available. So that person is the one who is responsible for the whole things. So how this knowledge transfer plan will be taken place between both the parties should also be comes under the roles and responsibilities here. Clear everyone? Right?
Yes, Raj.
Yeah.
Right? Next, one more point is project kickoff dates. When the project has to kick off. That also should be known here. Right? Next, at the same time, this is which is important. Pre-sales technical skills. Right? So what kind of technical skills and all everything these people should be having. So these pre-sales technical skills and all that. So these are the areas where most of the means roles and responsibilities when you talk about vendor and as well as the client, all that, right? If you are thinking from that context and all, first of all, details of the project planning is required. Next, project timelines are needed here as well. Terms and conditions must be known to us well in advance. Knowledge transfer plan is also another role and responsibility one should understand here. At the same time, they must be knowing about project kickoff dates. Next, pre-sales technical skills. At the same time, they need to understand the governance process as well. Governance process or governance mechanism. Governance process should be understood both the ends, both the ends, either from the client side or from the vendor side. Governance process should be so. There must be an alignment between these two people for sure. There must be an alignment, proper alignment between these two parties. Then only the application as well as the solution will become successful in future. If it was not happened, then there will be of no point in working on it. So this pre-sales technical skills, governance process and procedures and all everything comes under this category. Clear everyone? Pawan, Vinay?
Yeah, right.
Yes, Raj. Yeah.
Right? So these are the details when you talk about roles and responsibilities of the client and vendor side. You must be having a clear understanding about these points. Apart from RFPs, all that stuff. What is that? Are we going to provide? Right now, when you talk about this RFP process, now here is a question because see, these are all something theory which you need to understand because this is all through interaction only it happens because there is nothing to show you anything, all that. Because if I show and all, those are only documents, right? So nothing to explain, so nothing to show and all. So now here is a question. You could ask me one thing then Raj, if this is the case, if it is an RFP process being prepared by the client, for example, who are the people involved in it? In the same way, whoever is doing in the pre-sales team, for example, you are in the vendor side, whatever the combination of people are available here, the same people are equally available there at the client location also. In the client location, almost the same people like stakeholders, procurement people, at the same time whoever is giving some technical information relating to the RFPs and all that stuff. So again, whatever the pre-sales team combination, whatever we have discussed in the last sessions and all, almost the same set of skills people will also be available there to prepare RFPs on that. But make sure apart from that, of course, as these are the RFPs and all, which are something focused more on the documentation, document writers are required. Document writers means whoever is preparing content, project documentation, who are well versed with providing project documentation, those people are needed apart from these combinations and all, because unless until there will be no detailed discussion from the client end, they don't come up with RFPs, because RFPs won't be prepared in a single day or two, because you guys know well, because RFPs will be prepared not less than 15 to 20 days time it will be taken. Sometimes it may go up to month to prepare an RFP, right? So to prepare an RFP, because first of all, customer and client should have a clear understanding about the in and outs, what is their requirements, everything should be known to us well in advance. Unless until if you don't have all these informations and all, moving further and all everything will be difficult. So business stakeholders has to be involved in it, Procurement professionals will be involved in it, even their technical team, project management team, if any, right? So because client side I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about the client side. At the same time, documentation team, all these people will be involved in preparing this RFPs and all everything before they are getting detailed information from the solution provider or from the client, like what are the project management planning document and all everything. If you want to prepare, for example, if you are a vendor, you want to prepare that the detailed RFPs and all everything you have to receive. Or in this detailed RFP process and all, whatever the highlighted points I was mentioned you, of course I have mentioned some highlighted points, but not the detailed ones, right? So highlighted points and all, those are the highlighted points which will be mentioned here. Clear, Vinay? Pawan?
Yeah, right.
Yes, Raj.
Right. So next week I'll continue. Next week I think next 3 days, next 3 week, next day, next week 3 days complete it will be taken. Right. Pre-sales team next 3 days it will be taken. So please be prepared for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, Vinay. Right, Pawan.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So meeting Friday, is it?